Yeah, Joshua's fighting Ngannou, innit? What do you think of that? Who do you think's going to win that fight there? Good fight, innit? You know, people are saying, oh, Joshua, he's back. You know, he's on a 3-fight winning streak. Yeah, Joshua's back, but who's he boxed, you know, in his past 3 fights? You know, he boxed that Jermaine Franklin, didn't he? You know, and that Jermaine Franklin, yeah, he won all that. Dillian White beat him, yeah. And you know this Jermaine Franklin guy, he used to work in a factory. And like, I used to work in a factory as well. And like, when you work in a factory, yeah, and you stood up for 12 hours and you're picking up boxes and stuff like that, you can't really train properly. You know, when you're working at night as well and your body clock's all fucked up, you can't really train properly. You know what I mean? But you know, Joshua, he's had the sort of luxury of, you know, getting that GB funding. So he was able to just fully focus, you know, on training and recovery and stuff like that. So that Jermaine Franklin guy, he wasn't able to prepare properly. He might have booked a couple of months off, you know, from the factory to prepare for Joshua. But I'm talking about over the years, he wasn't able to, you know, really train properly. And if he was working in a factory, he was probably broke as well. So he couldn't afford the top supplements and the top dietitians and nutritionists. And, you know, he couldn't really prepare properly, you know, and train like a full-time professional athlete could, you know, because he was working in the factory. So, you know, Joshua beating him, he didn't look brilliant, did he, Joshua? So that fight was nothing. Who else did Joshua box? Hellenius. You know, that Hellenius, you know, he got fucked up by Deontay Wilder, didn't he? You know, and Deontay Wilder, he's just got that big right hand on it, and that's about it. And that Hellenius, he was kind of stiff, you know, he didn't really have good head movement. So Wilder, he just caught him, you know, with that right hand and just fucked him up. And like seeing Wilder, you know, his performance against Joseph Parker, it kind of shows, don't he? You know, that Deontay Wilder's not really that good anyway. He just managed to land a right hand on that stiff Hellenius, you know, and knocked him out. So, you know, Joshua beating that Hellenius, it's not like a great achievement, is it? You know, and who else did he box? Otto Wallin. You know, Otto Wallin, he was kind of living off that whole bloodying up Tyson Fury, wasn't he? He was nothing as well. You know, he was stiff, you know what I mean? He was like scared to throw a punch, you know, against Joshua. He's a southpaw as well, and you could tell that he was like trying to box like Usyk. You know, you could tell that his trainer would have studied Usyk fucking up Joshua, who's a southpaw as well, Usyk, you know, and he would have tried to like implement that same game plan. But Otto Wallin, he's not fucking Usyk, is he? He's not Usyk, man. So, you know, when that Otto Wallin got in there with Joshua, you could tell he had it in mind, you know, that he wanted to try and box like Usyk, but he's not fucking Usyk, is he? So it's like he kind of froze and he didn't know what to do, you know, because he wanted to implement that sort of Usyk style, you know, against Joshua. But he couldn't, could he? You know, and he just fucking, he didn't do anything. He didn't pose any kind of serious threat to Joshua. So it's all right, Eddie Hearn saying, yeah, Joshua's back. You know, he's had a 3-fight winning streak, but it's not a good streak, man. It's not that impressive. I still don't think Joshua's got it. I still think he's lost it, you know, after that beatdown from Ruiz and getting concussed in sparring prior to the Ruiz fight, the first fight. So all this shit about Joshua's back and yeah, he's back to his best and this and that. I don't believe it at all. I don't believe it. So this fight here with Francis Ngannou, it's quite interesting, isn't it? You know, to see how it goes. I don't know, I kind of want Francis Ngannou to win. I kind of want him to beat Joshua, innit? You know what I mean? You know, this Francis Ngannou, he's used to fighting in like 4-ounce gloves, so, you know, he's never really been close, you know, to being stopped, you know, in the UFC. And I think Joshua, I don't think he's going to try and, you know, get stuck in there and try and fucking knock Ngannou out. I think he's going to run around the ring, you know, like he did against Ruiz in the rematch. I don't think Joshua's going to stand there, you know, and fucking have it out with him. I kind of want him to beat Joshua, innit? You know what I mean? This Ngannou's a tough guy, man. I was watching his interview, you know, with Joe Rogan when he was talking about working on the sand mines. You know, when he was a kid. You know, that child exploitation kind of work, you know, in the sand mines. He used to do that after school, didn't he, Ngannou, you know, and on the weekends and, you know, the school holidays. Because he was like really broke, you know. He said to Joe Rogan that he couldn't afford a pencil. You know, and paper. So when he went to school, he didn't have a pencil or paper. You know, and all the kids used to take the piss out of him, you know, and they didn't used to talk to him, you know, because he was so broke. You know, not being able to afford a pencil and working on the sand mines. So that kind of caused him to become really tough, you know what I mean? He's got that toughness about him, hasn't he, Ngannou. But Joshua, he hasn't really got that, has he? Joshua, he tries to act tough, you know, because he did a bit of community service, you know, for selling drugs. So that's what Joshua tries to live off, don't he? He tries to act all tough and hard and act like he's had a tough life and tries to act like a gangster, you know, because he did a bit of community service for selling drugs. It's not the same, is it, as working in a sand mine, you know, as a little child slave like Ngannou did. You know, and that Ngannou, he was homeless as well, you know, when he left Cameroon. You know, he went to Paris, you know, to try and pursue a career as an MMA fighter. And he was homeless, you know, really toughing it out. So he's had a tough life, hasn't he, that Ngannou, you know what I mean? So he's really solid. And hopefully he fucks up Joshua. And like people are saying, well, you know, he hasn't really had a boxing background. Joshua was an Olympic gold medalist and he's had a load of fights in the pros and he's had that experience. But, you know, this Francis Ngannou, you know, his lack of boxing experience, it might benefit him, you know, because like, you know, Brendan, yeah, used to say to us, like, the hardest guys to fight are the ones who don't know how to fight. And obviously Ngannou knows how to fight in a real fight. But as far as boxing, you know, he's a bit unorthodox, isn't he? You know, when he boxed Tyson, he was like switching and he was just he was a bit awkward. So him not really having that boxing pedigree, it might benefit him, you know, in his boxing career, because he's not like a traditional boxer. You don't really know what he's going to do. And like going back to Brendan, you know, he used to get Naz sparring with little kids, you know, again, who didn't really know how to fight, you know, because they haven't really got that trained mind of being a traditional boxer. And they were just throwing wild punches. And he used to get me doing it as well, you know, just sparring with little kids who were just throwing wild punches from weird angles. So he didn't really know what to expect from him. Like a lot of boxers, they throw like combinations, you know, like predictable, left, right, left hook, left, right, left hook. But these little kids who didn't know how to box, they were just throwing punches from all kinds of angles, you know, really unorthodox. And it kind of like gets you to expect the unexpected. So this Francis Ngannou, he's kind of similar, isn't he? He hasn't really got the boxing trained mind, you know, and style. That's why he managed to, you know, fuck up Tyson Fury and pretty much beat him. Pretty much everyone thought that Ngannou won, you know, he knocked Tyson down, you know, and just gave him a load of problems. You know, people are saying, well, you know, in the rematch, Tyson Fury, he would take the fight seriously because he and pretty much everyone else expected Tyson Fury to easily beat Francis Ngannou. So in the rematch, Tyson Fury would prepare better and take it more seriously. But then Ngannou would probably improve as well because he'd have more time, you know, to like prepare, and he would have like money now because he was broke, wasn't he? That Dana White robbed him, you know, he tried to like pay him peanuts, you know, for his UFC fights. And like, you know, that Francis Ngannou, he said to Joe Rogan that, you know, that Dana White, yeah, he got a big sponsorship deal, you know, from Crypto.com. And he basically made all of his UFC fighters, you know, put the Crypto.com logo, you know, on their fight kit. So they wasn't able to like put their own sponsors, you know, on their fight kits. So they couldn't get sponsors, you know what I mean? Because they weren't allowed to like put their sponsor's logo, you know, on their fight kit. So they missed out on like sponsorship money. But you know, now Francis Ngannou got that big payday against Tyson Fury. You know, now, you know, he might really improve because now he can afford like top dietitians and nutritionists and, you know, be able to afford all the fancy supplements, you know, that Joshua can afford. So him getting that payday, he might have really benefited him, you know, and he's got a chance to like pay, you know, like top sparring partners, you know, to help him prepare for actual boxing fights. So that payday that he got from Tyson Fury, I think it was like $10 million or something like that. You know, that could have really benefited him, you know, and his confidence would have been boosted, you know, by that performance and knocking Tyson Fury down like that. And he might even put on a better display, you know, against Anthony Joshua. So we'll see how it goes, innit? It's quite interesting, innit? Because, like, you know, before Ngannou fought Tyson Fury, you know, Eddie Hearn and Joshua, when they were asked if they'd be willing to take on the Ngannou fight, Joshua and Eddie Hearn, they were like, nah, there's no point in Joshua fighting him because, it's just a gimmick. It's a silly fight. Joshua wants to win titles. You don't want any silly gimmick fights. But, seeing that performance against Tyson Fury from Ngannou, now they're taking the fight, aren't they? And Eddie Hearn is already talking about, rematches. He's already talking about the rematch, innit, Eddie Hearn. He's like saying, the rematch, we can put it on in Africa. Like Ali against Foreman, when they fought in Zaire. So Eddie Hearn is already talking about a rematch, innit? It's like he kind of suspects that Ngannou is going to fuck up Joshua, even though Eddie Hearn's not going to say that. It's in his mind, man. After that performance against Tyson Fury. So he's talking about putting the rematch on, in Africa. Because Joshua's from Nigeria and Francis Ngannou's from Cameroon. But Joshua, yeah, he's a fake African, man. Real Africans, they don't really acknowledge him. My dad, yeah, he bought some land in Africa a few years ago. So, like, the Africans who were looking after my dad's land, I talked to him, innit, because they're kind of looking after the land and that, and we have, like, little conversations and, a bit of chit-chat here and there. And, when we talk about boxing, yeah, these Africans, they say that they don't like Joshua. They don't acknowledge him. They don't look at him as a real African, because he went on the Graham Norton show. And Africans, they're kind of homophobic, aren't they? So, seeing Joshua go on the Graham Norton show and, mingle in those kind of circles, Africans, they don't really like Joshua. They don't really acknowledge him. They look at him as a fake African, you know what I mean? So, Eddie Hearn saying he's going to put the rematch on in Africa. And, yeah, two Africans going at it. Africans don't really acknowledge Joshua, like they do Ngannou. But I just find it interesting, Eddie Hearn talking about rematches, you know what I mean, already, before the first fights even happened. But I hope fucking Ngannou beats Joshua, man. I like this whole story, of this guy who made his pro debut against the so-called #1 heavyweight in boxing, Tyson Fury, and just fucked him up. And I'm kind of hoping he does the same with Joshua. It's a nice story, innit? The nice little underdog story. Some people are saying that Ngannou will perform better, against Joshua than he did Tyson because, he'll have more time to train, with Mike Tyson. But I don't know, I don't really rate Mike Tyson as a trainer. Just because he was a good boxer, he's going to be a good trainer. Like, who trained Mike Tyson? Like, Cos Tomato. What did he achieve as a boxer? He wasn't really an established elite boxer, was he? Neither was that Teddy Atlas, or that Wayne Rooney, who trained Tyson as well. So none of them guys were great boxers, but they managed to train Mike Tyson, and get him to a good level. So you don't need to be a good boxer to be a good trainer. It don't really work like that, does it? Brendan Ingle, he was a boxer, but he wasn't all that good. But, he produced some really good fighters. So, Francis Ngannou, having Mike Tyson in his corner, I don't really think that would benefit him. But yeah, we'll see if Ngannou puts on a nice little performance, against Joshua like he did against Tyson Fury. But Joshua, he might improve a little bit, from his last performance, because he'll have another training camp, with that little bend over son. So, having another camp with him, it might improve Joshua. Because that seems to be a nice little team, don't it? Bend over son and his little assistants, Barry Smith and that Lee Wiley. I think they kind of do drills, in their little gym. They get fighters to like drill certain techniques, that they think will work, against their opponent. That's what Lee Wood said, Lee Wood, he's kind of done well, hasn't he? Since moving to Bend Over Son. And that little team, he seems to have really progressed, Lee Wood, and he's become a world champ, and a multi-millionaire. And I used to be in the gym with him, back in the day in Sheffield, and he wasn't really doing anything. He was getting paid a few little poxy grand here and there, and he wasn't really fighting. He was, boxing for little silly area titles. But, when he left, he started to really improve, Lee Wood. Became a world champ and a multi-millionaire. So it kind of worked out for him. So we'll see if it has the same effect, on Joshua. If that little bend over son gets Joshua doing all these drills. over and over again, to perfect his little technique. If they spotted vulnerability in Joshua's opponent, Francis Ngannou, they'll probably drill it, and just do repetitive drills. It kind of reminds me of Dr. Dre. Dr. Dre, you'll get a little artist that he's working with in the studio, and he'll get the artist, to repeat the same line over and over again. I've heard artists talking, in interviews when they've worked with Dr. Dre, and they said that Dr. Dre makes them say the same line over and over again, 100 times until they get the line off perfectly. And that's probably what that little bend over son does, with his fighters. He gets them to do these drills, until they perfect it. So it might benefit Joshua, working with this little bend over son and his little team. It might work out nicely for Joshua, so we'll see how he performs. But yeah, Joshua Ngannou is quite an interesting little matchup, innit? They're saying that they're gonna, these Saudis, they're gonna make a sort of Day of Reckoning Part 2, it's going to be like a big undercard. I'd like to see that Zhang, against Daniel Dubois. Wilder, he was considered in that mixed one here, but, after his performance against Joseph Parker, he's not really being spoken about, in that little mix. In that little conversation as to who the top heavyweights are. He's not really in the mix anymore, is he, Deontay Wilder? People are saying that his shit performance, against Joseph Parker was down to ayahuasca. Carl Froch, he said it as well, on his channel. He said, ayahuasca, it's good for the average person, but, for fighters, it's not beneficial. Like it makes you all peaceful and, at ease in life, and it makes you just really chilled out and mellow, and it kind of takes away your sort of killer instincts, and that's kind of what Deontay Wilder had, didn't he? Just kind of throwing that right hand. But Carl Froch basically said, that ayahuasca has kind of turned Deontay Wilder into a pussy, and he's lost that sort of killer instinct, that he used to have, because he's on the ayahuasca. That kind of stuff, that kind of spiritualism and, looking to a higher force and, having a spiritual awakening and stuff like that. Doing a bit of soul searching and looking for the purpose of life and looking for a higher being. All that spiritual stuff. It kind of works for some fighters, innit? Them UFC fighters, those Muslims. It seems to benefit them, they're kind of dominating, in the UFC, they're spiritual, aren't they? They're Muslims. I think religion, it can benefit you in ways, as far as like keeping you away from alcohol and drugs and pussy and all that kind of stuff. But, Deontay Wilder's little soul searching, it's not the same, because Deontay Wilder, he like drinks, and he smokes and he's like twerking, and stuff like that. Fighters like Khabib and that Hamzat, them guys, they're kind of strict Muslims, aren't they? And it kind of benefits their fighting careers. But Wilder, it's not the same, is it? Same with that junkie, Jarell Miller. He tried to convert to Islam, didn't he? And then the next day he got arrested, for carjacking. Basically, he got his car repossessed, yeah. And, the fucking car man, he went to pick up the car, from Jarell Miller. Jarell Miller got him in a headlock, started trying to fuck him up, and then Jarell Miller drove off with the car. But, the car, it had like a tracker on it. So, the police, they eventually caught up with Jarell Miller, and they locked him up, didn't they? So, all this fucking fake Muslim business, him converting to Islam, it's a load of shit, man. He's just doing that, to try and get in there with the Saudis. That little so-called excellent guy, Turkey. Yeah, he's just trying to suck up to him, and Jarell Miller, to get another payday, in Saudi. And some people are saying, how can he fucking get his car repossessed, and he just got like paid $3 million, to fight Daniel Dubois. But it's like, if you get $3 million, you get taxed 50%, so you get taxed $1.5 million. So he's got $1.5 million left. He's had to pay his trainers and his managers, and, Eddie Hearn probably took a percentage off him as well. So he's probably got $1 million left. He's got loads of kids. So he's paying out all this child support, you know, to all these baby mamas. He seems kind of reckless, don't he? You know, when he pushed Joshua and he started acting daft, and he pushed Dubois as well. You know, and he started saying that he wanted to take Joshua's mom on a date, you know, and stuff like that. So he loves pussy, don't he, Jarell Miller? So, you know, he's probably broke, man. So that's why he converted to Islam, you know, to try and suck up to that so-called excellent guy. Turkey, or whatever his name is. So he might be broke, Jarell Miller. He seems kind of reckless, don't he? So he's probably reckless, you know, with his spending habits as well. So he got his car repossessed, didn't he? Should be a good fight, man. Should be a really good fight. You know, with these two big guys here, you know, going at it. I like the sweet science of boxing. I like skill. You know, Mayweather with his little fancy shoulder blocks, you know, and his little counters. It's quite nice to see, innit? I was watching that Pernell Whitaker as well the other day, and he had some little fancy defensive moves, didn't he? He was quite good, quite skillful. But, you know, sometimes you just want to see a fucking bloodbath, you know, and we might get it, you know, with these two guys. But I don't know, I think Joshua, he might apply the same tactics that he did against Ruiz, you know, in the rematch, and just kind of ruin it, you know, running around the ring. You know, scared of that Ngannou and his power. Because like Joshua as well, he's not going to be able to intimidate that Ngannou, is he? You know, like he did with that Dominic Breazeale. You know, when Joshua took his belt off his shoulder and gave it to Eddie Hearn, and he started saying to that Dominic Breazeale, don't push up on me. Hand on my heart, don't push up on me. You know what I mean? I'm not an actor, Dominic. Don't act with me. You know, giving it all that. That's what Joshua was doing with that Dominic Breazeale, wasn't he? You remember that little face-off that they had? You know, Joshua, he was trying to mentally bully Dominic Breazeale, wasn't he? Saying, don't push up on me. I'm not an actor. Don't act with me. You know, trying to take the belt off his shoulder as well. Trying to act like he's going to start scrapping with Dominic Breazeale. He can't do that with Francis Ngannou, can he, Joshua? You know, Ngannou, he'd fuck him up, you know, in a real fight. So we'll see how it goes anyway, you know, in a boxing ring. Yeah, I'm going to wrap it up, but thanks for tuning in again. Yeah, thanks for that.